Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us. Welcome to Women in High Tech's first virtual Executive Women's Forum, or EWF. My name is Angela Freeman, and I am an intellectual property and patent attorney at Barnes & Thornburg here in Indianapolis, as well as the president of Women in High Tech. As you likely have seen from the scrolling PowerPoint, Women in High Tech is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has been working for over 20 years in the central Indiana community to support, recognize, and promote women in science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM fields. Our mission is to change the landscape of women represented in STEM to be equally inclusive to all. Women in High Tech is operated by an all-volunteer working board of 15 directors, along with emeritus board members, and volunteers. And although you cannot see them, I'd like to acknowledge and thank all of our board members and their hard work and dedication to this organization and our mission. And I'd especially like to thank Linda Hicks, Lori Boyer, and Rebecca Boardman for all their help to make this first virtual EWF happen today. We are so excited to welcome so many of you to our second Executive Women's Forum this year in 2020. Many of you may have joined us for our special edition EWF event in February that hosted a panel of diverse women to discuss the disparity of diversity amongst women in STEM. It was a very powerful program. And while we certainly missed the opportunity to connect and network and mingle in person, as would typically occur at an in-person EWF, we are extremely pleased that this virtual format has allowed almost 500 people, we still can't believe it, 500 people to join us today. Yeah, we're excited. Many of which are likely not Women in High Tech members, and some of us are even joining from around the country, not necessarily in Indiana. So we're super pleased by that. And in fact, this virtual EWS was purposely designed to welcome members and non-members with the hope that doing so would provide an opportunity for women in high tech to more broadly provide support and professional development content to persons that may or may not have been affected by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So we are really pleased that you are here to join us today. But before we get started, I'd like to take a brief poll that will pop up on your screen for each of you to answer in order to ascertain, is today your first introduction to Women in High Tech and what we do? If so, answer your poll, please. And let's see what we have. Do we have a poll? Do you all see a poll?
Yes.
You see, okay, here we go. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, now I couldn't have foreseen that. 50-50 straight up. 50% are brand new to the organization, so that's about 250 people. 250 people are likely members or friends who are coming back. That's awesome. And I'm super pleased to see that. So thank you all so much. And with that brief welcome, I'd like to introduce Linda Hicks, Women in High Tech's Executive Women's Forum Director and organizer of today's event. Linda?
Thank you so much, Angela. And welcome. I'd like to ditto that welcome that Angela just made to everyone. And hopefully we'll live up to your expectations. We're presenting a topic that we knew would resonate well with our members and STEM friends. And we hope, and we think this level of attendance we have right now really validates this point. This session was supposed to be held in person, as Angela said, and it was generously going to be hosted by Roche Diagnostics at their Indianapolis headquarters. But unfortunately, our stay-at-home order resulted in us having to have these alternate plans. But nonetheless, I'd like to thank the Roche team, specifically Melissa Lavella and Cindy Lamper, for helping me frame out the topic and helping me put together this really outstanding panel of HR, diversity, and business leaders. And I'd like to also shout out to Lori Boyer and her team, because those of us who are not IT savvy had to learn a lot quickly in order to make sure that this went off without a hitch. So let me share with you how the topic today, leveraging the gift of feedback, came about. We had input from, specifically input we received at our 2019 fall retreat, that they really wanted to hear how to gain some meaning from what they perceived as incomplete, dishonest, or insincere performance reviews. And this topic naturally complemented our 2019 EWF topics that centered on how to drive career growth and personal improvement. So in 2019, we learned the importance of recognizing and leveraging your strengths and ways to put your self-confidence into action. So now with this panel discussion, we're going to hear how feedback can be embraced and ultimately used effectively as a career building tool. I know we've all received feedback, and most of the time, how do you think about it? You know, do you consider it a gift or something to dread? I know I'm one of the older members of our Women in High Tech community, and I can tell you I've received plenty of feedback over my 35-year engineering career. And I'd like to say it's all been positive, but unfortunately, I have to admit I'm not perfect. Now, hopefully, my husband is not on this call. So, but even with all this experience, I still have to remind myself to be open-minded and find that nugget of truth in the performance information that's going to help me improve my overall leadership. And that's not easy. I'm the type of person, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. However, I can tell you that when I shift my paradigm and really see the information as a gift, I can drive meaningful development plans and bring my performance to the next level. So with that, I'd like to get us started. And first, with respect to any questions, please feel free to type those into the question bar at the bottom of your screen. We see those, and at the end, we have left time so we can ask our panel members a few of these. And then knowing that we probably won't get to everybody's question following the event, we're going to publish a summary online and try to, get to the heart of the majority of the issues that are still on everybody's mind. So let me introduce our moderator, Sonal Sheth-Zawari. She's president and founder of True You. Sonal is an outstanding and nationally recognized motivational speaker, lifestyle coach, trainer, mentor, entrepreneur. I think I've got all those. There's probably more. She's quite talented. Her greatest passion is to inspire leaders to identify their purpose and to guide them toward the achievement of meaningful success and personal improvement, contribution to others. She's been so instrumental in preparing the content for this discussion. Women in High Tech is so thankful that she offered her expertise to us. And for me, it's been a real learning and rewarding opportunity to work with her on this. So with that, I'll turn everything over to Sonal.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was very thoughtful. And Angela and the entire Women in High Tech, you truly are my favorite women. And I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate everyone today for being on this call and taking the time out. I know you have a lot of places you could be, and you chose to be with us today. So thank you so much for that. I want to take this quick moment to share with you, because I know that every time you have something in front of you, you want to get an idea of where is this going to take me and what will I learn from this awesome time with these wonderful women. And so I want to share those objectives with you real quick. And then I want to dive right into having each of these ladies introduce themselves and let you know the power women that they are. Okay. So today, our whole goal with this and leveraging the gift of feedback, and Linda, you said it so warmly to my heart. In the 28 years that I've been in working, every time I heard the word feedback, I usually get excited. And I noticed that a lot of my colleagues would get, oh, my stomach feels sick, and oh my gosh. And it's amazing, because I'm like, really? I love one-on-ones. And I share that because, it's all about perspective, right? How we hear and receive it. So my goal for you today, for each of you out there, is to think about how you receive feedback and how you get to shift that, because it is something that you have the privilege to do. So our goal today is, when you are receiving feedback, how do you validate whether what you're hearing is sincere or genuine. That's going to be one of the takeaways. The second one, how do we use feedback we receive constructively? Right? How are we going to use it to help us? And three, once we receive that feedback, how do we validate and ensure that this advice and feedback is consistent and on point with your opportunities to develop your career? Because we know how important that is too, right? And finally, how will we process this feedback into actionable? I love when we get to take action, right? Actionable development plans for personal and professional growth. So everyone out there in the audience, that's our hope for you to take away. Ladies, I want to start with you. I'm so excited that you're joining us. We have some amazing women here, and I'm going to start, and I'm going to have each one of you introduce yourself, 1 or 2 minutes. Let us know all about your awesomeness. Let's start with you, Candy.
Thanks so much, Sonal, and I am so excited to be on this panel with the other fabulous women. We are going to have a great discussion. I'm Candy King, Director of Strategic Projects, Diversity and Inclusion. Before I get started with my experience, I'll just tell you a little bit about our company. Proud to be hosting virtually, and I'm glad we can make this work. Roche is a Swiss-owned company, and it started back in 1896 in Basel, Switzerland, and Roche is the world's largest biotech company. Worldwide, we have more than 90,000 employees in over 150 countries, so a great footprint. Indianapolis is our North America headquarters with more than 4,500 people working together to provide access to information that helps people around the world manage and improve personal health conditions. I have more than 30 years industry experience. That experience is in business system support, service operations, compensation plan development, business analytics and reporting, contracting, and project management. I'm located in Indianapolis, and I've been with Roche for 18 years. I'm proud of 3 years that I actually spent working in Roquefort, Switzerland, where I was leading an IT project team responsible for taking like 52 systems from around the world and creating just one global system. So this is really where I developed my love for diversity and inclusion. In my current role, I'm responsible for advancing the efforts of the company's 7 business resource groups with the focus on diverse talent acquisition and development, building external partnerships, developing sustainable diversity and inclusion processes, as well as employee education. Now, during this time where we're focused on COVID-19, Roche is working with urgency, passion, and purpose, and I am so proud to call Roche my company home. So the next question I think we have to answer is feedback, and what does it mean to me? And I think I heard Linda say this, it is really a beautiful gift. I feel like feedback is a beautiful gift, and if you accept it, it really allows you to move and to grow.
Andy, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I'm a little confused because you look like you just got out of college, so I'm not sure how you squeezed all of that in.
I wear it well, right? I wear it well.
And a shout out to those glasses. So Candy, thank you so much, and we appreciate you joining us today. We're going to go to Charlotte Hawthorne. Charlotte, will you introduce yourselves, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share not only with this panel, but hopefully with some folks who can learn from some of the knowledge and wisdom that we've learned, maybe the hard way. I am the Director for Diversity and Inclusion at Eli Lilly and Company, headquartered here in Indianapolis. I am the mother of 4, 3 young adults, and 1 middle schooler who is home with me during this period of time. I have spent my entire career at Lilly, over 30 years. However, I've done lots of different things during my time at Lilly. After graduating from Georgia Tech, I actually came to Indianapolis to work for Lilly as an engineer. So like many of the women in high tech, I spent the first half of my career supporting manufacturing and doing different engineering roles. about midway through my career, I had a pretty major pivot as I got involved in training and really found a new passion and a new career home. So I've had the opportunity over the last 15 years to divide my time between working on diversity and inclusion and really helping to drive the company's efforts to be a leader in creating environments where all employees can feel welcomed, valued, respected, and heard, as well as understanding how we can support our patient population, which reflects the diversity of this nation. The other half of that time I've spent in leadership development. And during the last few years, I've really had an opportunity to blend my two passions, and that is developing leaders and driving diversity and inclusion. So I spend quite a bit of my time working with women and multicultural leaders and emerging talent in really being all that they can be and really coming into their full potential. So I live to encourage and to really coach and develop and train primarily women and people of color into becoming their best selves.
Charlotte, you know, I met you years ago, and you definitely are a powerhouse. I've met so many people on the receiving end of what you offer, and you're truly an amazing talent. So, wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we appreciate you being here with us today. Awesome. We have now Marcella Kerberger. Did I say that right, Marcella?
That's right. It's Marcella Kerberger. Thank you. Thank you. My husband's last name is a while to be able to pronounce it because I'm Spanish. Originally, my R's and G's did not roll the way that last name was meant to be said. But my name is Marcella. I am the general counsel for Roche Diagnostics Corporation and Roche Diagnostics Operations in Indianapolis. Working with Candy as well. In Indianapolis, I am, as I said, originally from Argentina, so Spanish is my first language. I went to law school many years ago in Argentina, and then I moved to the US when I was 23. I lived first in Florida, then in New Jersey the majority of my life, and for the last 5 years in Germany. Always working in-house after a few years at a law firm, and 8 months with Roche here in Indianapolis. And what an opportunity. To Candy's point, Roche is making a huge difference in the world, and so I'm extremely proud. I also have 3 kids with a middle schooler at home too, so I empathize with Charlotte. And my motto in life is, truly has always been, sky's the limit and everything is figure outable. At this stage in my life, I want to repay the help that I received growing up in my career, and nothing gives me more joy than to support and help people out.
Marcella, that's awesome, and thank you so much. And wow, what an upbringing it must have been. How awesome to come from your native country and come here and represent. So we are very grateful for you being able to support us today with a different perspective from your organization, right? So I appreciate that, and we appreciate that. Thank you. And finally, we have Rupal Thanawala. Hi, Rupal. Welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say hello to everyone virtually. I'm such a people person that I'm always there meeting people. So I wish we could have all met in person, but I'm sure we could have not met 500 people. So I'm so glad we are doing it this way. First of all, thanks a lot to Women in High Tech for giving me this opportunity to speak about a topic which is very near and dear to my heart. But most importantly, I really want to shout out because I'm a mom of 2 boys, and both the boys have been part of Women in High Tech. In fact, my oldest son, who works for Roche, and his laptop has a Women in High Tech sticker on that. And so I'm so glad that you have helped me raise 2 male allies in the being a tech mom. So that's my biggest introduction, probably. Because I think, that is the most proud moment that, Women in High Tech you have gifted to my children. On a professional level, I've been a digital and business transformation consultant for over 20 years. And my most of the career, I have helped my clients anywhere from blueprinting to all the way to go live and post-project implementation for Fortune 500 companies, whether it's solving their toughest business problem to having digital transformation. Over the period of years, I have worked for probably clients over 35 countries and working in most of their business units, anywhere from marketing and sales to quality management, manufacturing, and technology. My passion is my community. I've been a proud Hoosier for last 23 years. And I've been very much involved with my community and serve on few of the boards. And one of them being I'm a president for Asian American Alliance and Black Data Processor Association's vice president. I'm just going to make a pivot. And very shortly, this is only for your ears today, I will be joining and start writing on Indianapolis Recorder as a tech editor. So thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing my journey.
Rupal, thank you. Wow, thank you for sharing that news. All 500 of you, for our ears only. Our ears only. Rupal, that's amazing. And I don't know if you know this, Rupal, but for some reason, both of you and I are very big extroverts. And everywhere I go in the city, I don't know if you get this, I always get, hey, are you Rupal or are you Sonal? And so we seem to be the twins out there. So I just thought I would share that. Thank you for joining us.
And our names also rhyme, isn't it?
A little bit, it does.
Yeah,
Sonal
and we
Rupal.
both from the same place in India. Okay, so that's another thing. We both come from the same region. So
yes.
Yeah, we have a lot in common.
Yes. So with that being said, ladies, thank you so much. I know everyone on this call is probably super excited and ready to dive right into these great questions and to hear your different perspectives. And as you know out there, each one of these ladies come from such a diverse background and they can bring those perspectives. So we're going to start with our first question. Ladies, are you ready? Everyone out there, I hope you're ready as well. So our first question is, describe your industry background and what does feedback mean to you, right? How do you interpret the word feedback when you hear it? And we'll go in order. I'm just going to cue you on. Candy, let's start with you, if you mind, just a couple minutes. And what does feedback mean to you in your industry and in your background?
So for me, feedback is extremely important. Being involved in diversity and inclusion, everyone takes feedback differently. And so for me, it's really important that I ensure that all levels of the organization are getting feedback. I'm giving it, I'm asking for it. Also making sure that maybe individuals in diverse populations, that some groups aren't as comfortable with giving feedback, to make sure that those individuals definitely are getting feedback and feel like their voice is being heard, that they're giving clear examples of what it is that they should do in order to improve. And as I said earlier, to me, feedback is a beautiful gift. And I want to encourage the audience, the people that are listening, to really take it as a gift, take that feedback, use it, and let it help you move. It could either be forward, it could be lateral, it could be up, but really help you move and grow. I think that is the key to all of this.
Well, thank you for identifying the different layers. Absolutely, Candy, and especially the fact that you are very mindful of making sure that all the layers of the organization have access to this feedback. That's awesome. And there's going to be a lot of answers to how you ladies are going to recommend doing that as we continue with these questions. So thank you so much for that. Charlotte, would you please share with us, describe what feedback means to you in your industry and background, and how do you interpret that word?
Got it. So I would say personally, what feedback means to me today isn't what it's always meant to me through the years. There's been some hard-fought lessons that I've learned around feedback and really getting to a place where I can see feedback as a positive thing. If I'm totally honest, there were times when if someone said, you know, let me give you some feedback, or even started into giving me feedback, I'd maybe go into a pretty dark place. To be totally honest, I just want you to tell me good job and I move on. But that's certainly not what it means to me today. And certainly in our industry, being a pharmaceutical industry, we're data driven. So we use the data, or we need data in order to make good decisions about what to do next. And it's the same way in our personal and professional lives. So today, feedback means to me a way of accomplishing what my ultimate goals are. So good feedback tells me what I'm doing well, and I should do more of, do more frequently, and continue to do. It also tells me what I might be doing that isn't as effective or is getting in the way of me accomplishing my goals. And so there are perhaps some things that I need to do differently. I need to stop doing altogether, or I need to be very mindful of to do less of. So to me, that's that data that we need in order to reach our ultimate outcome, which whatever that is, if it's getting a pharmaceutical product to market, or if it's achieving my career goals, using that data to get me there, be it positive or constructive. That's what feedback is for me today, data points.
Charlotte, thank you for that. That is really interesting that you share that, because it really automatically in my brain made me think it's amazing how different feedback is going to be perceived and received, industry based, right? So you're in a very, as you emphasized, in a very data driven, and there are a lot of relationships, there are a lot of organizations out there that are very relationship driven, you know, so it really depends. And I think it's great that you emphasize that because you're data driven, that you really had this really amazing learning mindset when you approach feedback. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that so much. Awesome. And I hope that helped all of you ladies out there too, and gentlemen. Marcella, would you share with us your perspective on what feedback means to you?
Pretty much similarly to what Charlotte just said. 20 years ago, I took feedback completely different than I do today. I always, growing up, I always loved to be liked. I'm a people person. I like to please. And so my take on feedback has evolved. I used to take it pretty hard a long time ago. Today, I absolutely, there's no question about it. I want it all the time. I'm relentless on that, because to my point before, that for me, sky's the limit, and I'm a work in process, and I can only get better with time. If I don't have those data points, I have blind spots, right? I mean, the ego always gets in the way. And so it's easy to build those walls back up. And so I try to be very thoughtful when I get feedback, put aside the ego. For me today, feedback is growth, opportunity, and doors opening. There's no other way that I see feedback today. And I think if I had taken this view 10 years ago, perhaps I would have done things differently.
Marcel, that's awesome, because how many people we have on this call that are at different stages of their career right now, right? And different stages in their lives. And I think it's great that, just like Charlotte and Candy emphasized, 20 years ago, I may have taken it as this, and today I'm receiving it as this. So it is a really great, to me, that's inspiring, right? It says, as I grow in my organization, in my business, in my career, I'm going to continue to have a growth mindset. Right? I'm going to be able to receive data and information and feedback and say, how can this support me and elevate me to what's possible? So I appreciate you confirming that for us. Thank you, Marcella. All right. Now, Rupal, if you can share with us, you've had a lot of different experiences as well. What does feedback mean to you?
Sure. So first of all, let me just tell you what is the industry I come, because for us, it's very different. Coming in a consulting, coming from a consulting industry, we have just not a metrics organization, but then we have two other complexity added to that. Is one is, our clients' feedback is extremely important, besides what we get from our performance manager or a supervisor. And second complexity is that during a 1 year, our roles, our clients, and our objectives can change dramatically. So for us, feedback has to be a continuous process and a candid conversation with your supervisor. And I look at it as a two-way street, because onus is on me to make sure that I am intelligently and constantly actually educating my supervisor also what I'm doing next and why I'm doing it, because he may set up some certain expectations, but that could dramatically change based on my project supervisor and my project clients, you know. So
Yeah.
for us, the feedback is slightly different. And so I look at this one as, you know, somebody who is a coach where I'm every week playing a game with different teams, but then my coach is the one who is standing on a sideline and taking making a notes on what moves I'm making and what I'm doing better and what I can do better, because every week my game is going to be a different game, you know. So I think that is where I look at it. It's a very growth opportunity, of course, as everybody said, for me. But then I also need to keep on retraining myself and learning new skills. And I'll talk about learning new skills later on, because that is a key thing for us. Our skills are never the same. So how does he help me grow, not only just from professional growth, but then also on being a better person and making sure that we are meeting our clients' requirements.
Rupal, that's awesome. You know, gosh, this is amazing. All of you have so many really unique perspectives from the spaces that you come from. And Rupal, I'm sure on this call, there are so many consultants out there, you know, wondering and thinking, how do I receive this feedback? And Rupal, what I heard you saying is, you know, it's about being timely, right? It's about being flexible and agile, and how critical that is in your field, especially, I'm sure in all fields, but especially more in yours, because you've got to be on it. It's going to shift, it's going to change, it's going to be new clients. So I think it's amazing that you can take that feedback again with the growth mindset and know and implement it. So thank you for that. This is wonderful, ladies. What we're going to do right now out there, folks, I'm sure you would love to get involved too. So this is a perfect time for us to ask you a question. We would like to ask you a poll question. And the poll question is, if you can't see it on your screen, you should have it on your screen, but if you're not on a screen, here's the question. Have you ever received feedback that felt insincere and didn't sit well with you? Please mark yes or no. And we're going to see those results here in just a minute as our specialist Lori pulls those together. There's quite a few out there. So in the meantime, I would like to just share with you a little bit what we think about when we think about feedback, right? Sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we just feel really uncomfortable either giving it or receiving the feedback. Why is that? Right? Why do we feel uncomfortable? And it's so important that we assume a positive and forward-thinking attitude, like the ladies mentioned. Oh, here they are. All right, the results, 90%. I don't know if you realize this. We maxed out on this call today. So there are 500 of you out there. And out of that, 90% of you said that I have received feedback that felt insincere and didn't sit well with you. So here's the greatness about that. We're going to continue now to talk about and learn from these amazing ladies. What does that mean? What do you do with that, right? And so I'm going to ask the next set of questions, and we're going to have two ladies answer this one, okay? And I'll just cue you if that's okay. Have you ever received feedback that didn't sit well with you, just like the question asked, and you didn't think if you didn't think it was sincere, how did you process it? How did you validate it? Right? In a way that resulted it being a learning experience for you. What did you do with that information? And Candy, if I may, I'll give you about 2 minutes. Start with you.
Okay. So I can think about a time, it was earlier in my career, and I had a new manager that I was working for, and our senior leader, who was head of the business unit, had wanted to put together a team to look at how should we reorganize, how should we restructure. The business was changing. We had heard from customers that we needed to start doing things differently. Satisfaction levels were not where they needed to be. So I was asked by our senior leader to lead the project team. And so I led the project team. I gave the recommendation to the senior leader. The next day, when I got to work, I had a message from my manager that she wanted to talk to me. So I thought, okay, again, this was a new relationship. I had only been working for her maybe about 3 months. So I went to her office for the meeting, and she started by saying that I had a great educational background, Purdue engineering student, graduate, And she paused, and then she said, but you don't have any real business experience to be put on that project and asked to lead it. And so I thought, okay. I said, so can you tell me more? So she gave me 2 more pieces of feedback, and she said that I was young for the position that I was in, and she doesn't think that my people really like working for me. So at the time, I had a team of about 15 people. And so I sat back in my seat, and I took a breath, because of course, you know, that is not easy to hear. And I thought about it, and the recommendation that I made would greatly impact the team that we currently had. And so I realized that this was really coming from an emotional place for her. And I said, okay, my team said that they didn't like working for me. I said, can you give me some examples of that? And she said, well, I don't really have examples, but that's just the way that I feel. And so then I knew that it was from a personal place. And so I said to her, I said, I am going to stop the conversation now. And I said, and if we are going to have any other feedback discussions, I would like my HR business partner to be present. I left her office. I went straight over to my HR business partner's office. We had offices back then, completely different than how it is alternative workspace now. And I said to the HR business partner, this is what happened. I explained the situation, and I said, and if there are any other discussions, I want you to be present. Well, the HR business partner was proactive, called us into a meeting. We talked about it. She admitted that she did give me that feedback. So needless to say, there were several other meetings, her with HR, her with the senior leader who had asked me to lead the project, which was who she reported into. She was given feedback on the appropriate way to give feedback, and the recommendation that my project team made was put into place. But
So
I do have to say that was not an easy experience for me. That was the first time I had ever experienced something like that, where it really felt like a personal attack from another female in the organization. I thought, hey, I'm working for a female. We should have things in common. And it was a really tough experience.
So Candy, thank you for being so vulnerable on that. What was your greatest takeaway for yourself for that, would you say?
I think the greatest takeaway was actually the pause, because I think there were so many other things I could have said, I could have done in that situation. But one thing that everybody said is I handled it in a very professional, very business mature way. And so I think that was the big thing that I took away. When you get that feedback that may not be what you expected, and sometimes it's not right, sometimes it is right, to just pause for a minute and really take that in, you know, get your composure, and then have a conversation about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Candy. Thank you for that candid conversation. Rupal, we would love to hear from you. Do you need me to repeat the question, or you got it?
I got it. I was, by the way, enjoying what, Candy was telling, and I said, oh my gosh, maybe I have a similar story, but slightly different twist. So this is almost 15 or 17 years back. I want to share a story where diversity and inclusion was not even heard in tech industry. So I had a supervisor, by the way, as a consultant, we travel Monday to Thursday. Everybody's traveling. Fortunately, I had a local client in Indianapolis, and all male team. There were some women, but not many. And it was a very common theme that, everybody right after the work, they all hang out together, go and sit in a beer bar, and, they bond. And I was actually responsible for building a global team for one of my clients in Indianapolis, probably 200 people from all over the world. But being a young mom, I did not, first of all, have time or appetite to hang out with people right after work. And as we had the 4 factors amongst the criterias people are rated, one of the criterias he rated me poorly was on team building. And that was a shock to me, because here I'm building a large global team and working in different time zones, of course, working from home at 5 in the morning or 12 in the night also, but also taking care of my kids. And at one point, he also made a comment that, I was looking for a business executive and you look like a soccer mom, which I was actually a soccer coach for my kids at the time, And I think that didn't sit very well with me. And it was very early on in my career. And I learned one new practice right after that conversation, that I always reach out to my board of directors. That is my full set of mentors and coaches. And I don't mean to criticize only one person who is your performance manager, because he could be right or wrong person for you. So it is also, I take full responsibility of my actions and my performance and everything. But I also want to validate it with somebody else, because sometimes it could be one individual's perspective. So it happens to be this person being a person of a majority work group in tech industry, never worked with that many women, and particular women of a diverse background. So it was very hard for him to even understand that, first of all, team building is not something, you hang out in the late evening, because rest of the team is now a global team. So we have to be mindful. We cannot have all those conversations over a beer or something when your team is actually in India, Argentina, Brazil, and Manila, So that is, we are just, leaving them away out of the whole conversation. And you all can have friendship, but that should not be part of my performance. So my takeaway from that whole experience was that, first of all, I'm grateful that, my team stood up for me. And when I talked to my mentors and all, I was shocked to know that, somebody's giving me bad rating for my team management. But at the same time, that was my wake-up call that, I need to build an informal diversity and inclusion group for us. That was a huge gap I found. And I started doing it. And since then, probably every company I worked, I've been always an informal diversity and inclusion champion, because I think that there is so much need even still today, where working moms or women of color or people of color are often, we're still in minority, and people don't quite understand. And to Candy's point, because she's a diversity expert, and so is Charlotte, 2 experts in this panel, that we need to be very, very mindful of, when we onboard people, how do we build those cohesive and inclusive teams, So it was a negative feedback, but then it turned out to be one of the blessing for me.
So thank you for that, Rupal. And it sounds like you did exactly what the topic is today, right? You leveraged the gift of feedback and you used it as a launching pad to say, moving forward in my career, for now on, I'm going to, and you were driven to say, this is the change I get to make. I am privileged to make, because I leveraged that gift of feedback, no matter what pain it caused. So thank you for demonstrating that and reflecting that. Let's go to our next question. I can see that we have other people having questions too, so I want to keep this going if we can. Our next question is for Charlotte and Marcella. Charlotte, you'll go first. What do you do if the feedback crossed the line, and here we go, Charlotte, and insulted who you are as a person? Do you have advice on how to reposition the information? How do you push back, stand up for yourself, and yet still learn from the situation? That was a long question. Are we good?
Yeah, really important question, and certainly one that can be very emotional. And it's hard to, like Candy said, take a pause when you do feel like you've received feedback that has crossed the line. I do remember maybe 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to do an assignment in our research area. And as an engineer, coming into a research area and working with a group of scientists to help do some project management was a very different experience, a little bit of a clash of cultures coming from a go manufacturing environment to a much more thoughtful and reflective research environment. And so I had a supervisor who I thought we had a really pretty good relationship with. He hired me into the role. And after one of our meetings, he pulled me aside, and a little bit like Candy's example, I think he got a little bit too familiar. And his feedback was that my Black girl came through in that meeting. And so after I fixed my face, which by the way will be the title of my book one day, Fix Your Face. After I fixed my face, I did have at least the presence of mind to really, I needed to get the information. But before I just went off on it and really let my Black girl come through, I needed to get the information. So I stopped and I asked him, what exactly did that look like? And so he went on to describe that as we were doing some brainstorming and trying to make some plans, that I became very directive. I thought things were going too slow. I got up, I went to the board. I started doing what was natural for me. I started highlighting on the board, tracking things on the whiteboard, and I really kind of took control of that meeting. And for him, that being directive felt maybe a little bit like being pushy, maybe not pulling people in. And that's what he sort of translated as my Black girl coming through. So having that information, for one, was really good because I think he was right. And it caused me to reflect on the environment I was in and perhaps how those behaviors might have been perceived in that environment. So I had that information, and I think it really helped me to be more productive and more effective in that environment. However, as you can imagine, what came next was feedback for him, was my feedback back to him, and helping him to understand that it was in no way okay for him to say what he said the way he said it. I appreciated the feedback, and what he said to me showed that he had a level of bias and stereotypes that caused me to question whether or not I could actually be successful in that environment if that's how you viewed me as an individual. I also knew full well that that was something that I could take to employee relations, and it could have certainly been an opportunity for me to deal with it that way. I did not. I thought when I gave him the feedback, he was extremely receptive of the feedback, and you know how typically it's like, oh, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. But it gave us an opportunity to really build on a relationship that as we went forward, I became his coach in what was below the line. And in fact, we'd be in meetings and it'd be like, don't say that, don't say that. But then also he helped me grow in how to be effective in a research environment. So I in no way would justify what was said. But I think what I wanted you to take away from here was, one, I really wanted to hear the information. So sometimes if you go off too quickly, you don't get the information, you get the defensiveness. So I allowed the information to come out, and then I had the opportunity to address the inappropriateness of that comment, and to let him know that in no way do I accept you talking to me like this or treating me in this way.
Oh, Charlotte, that's amazing. What an amazing story. And what I heard you saying is that you truly took the gift of active listening and you translated it into the power of effective communication. And I'm sorry, Charlotte, what's your title right now?
Director of Diversity and Inclusion.
And you dropped the mic. Right? I mean, how brilliant it was that you took all of that and you wrapped it up in this beautiful package. And here's the greatest thing that I heard, at least. Everyone has different perspectives out there. But I heard that you have the privilege to be his coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have the privilege to teach him. What a great way to turn that around and turn it into meaningful. So thank you for that, Charlotte. I appreciate that. We are now at a beautiful space in this where we're going to just quickly transition into another section. I see a lot of Q&A coming through. So thank you so much out there for asking questions. We really, really are excited about you being involved with us in this conversation. I promise you that. We're going to have another poll question coming up here in about 10 minutes. And then after that, we're going to keep enough space to get your questions answered by these fabulous ladies. So please be patient with us, and thank you so much again for joining us if you're just getting on the phone. I wanted to talk about different types of feedback. Now, I want to preface for the audience that there's a ton out there, and you, as much as I would have done research on what kinds there are and what styles there are, I'm just bringing a couple of them in, just a couple that felt that it fit for this moment in time, right? One of the ones that I looked up was, and this came from experts from Harvard, it was evaluation feedback. And this is the kind of feedback that needs to be done at the moment to help the person receive the feedback, know where they stand, right? That's where we can actually stick in our active listening. The other kind of feedback is situation, behavior, and impact feedback. This is where this model focuses on describing the situation, the behavior, and then the impact in detail, right? So you state what impact a situation or behavior has, closes the actual feedback process, and allows both the recipient and the giver to propose a solution for any mistakes that have been made. And the third kind of feedback, a lot of you, we all love this one, is the appreciation feedback, right? And this appreciation feedback in coaching should be given on a daily basis to help inspire and motivate the person. And I love that one. Here's my big takeaway. When you give feedback, do it timely. Don't wait a full month or two to go out. Do it right then and there. So that's going to allow us to go right into the next question. And I'm going to actually ask this question to each of you, okay? And what is your most memorable type of feedback you've received? And if I didn't list it and you have your own, please feel free to chime in, okay? And what is your most memorable type of feedback that you've received? And why was this your most memorable feedback? And who did you get this from? Who did you receive this from? Candy, can we start with you?
Yeah, so I really appreciate the situation behavior impact. We call it the SBI model, and we train our new employees when they come through Welcome to Roche that this is what they should expect feedback to look like. And so for me, the most memorable feedback is feedback, and it was over a period of time, actually 3 years, that I received from one of my leaders who at the time was the head of IT for North America Diagnostics. And I worked for her when I did my global assignment over in Switzerland, and an extremely powerful female leader. And what was so important about this feedback is I was working in Switzerland, my first time living outside of the U.S., and she was actually located in the U.S. And even though we had this large body of water between us, in those 3 years, I never felt that distance. We constantly stayed in contact. It was very timely feedback. It was authentic. There were examples that were given. And the other thing that's big about the SBI model, we also talked about like alternative behaviors, and we also talked about alternative impact. So the behavior that didn't work, here's the impact that it created. And let's go through a scenario of what your behavior could have been for that situation, and then what your impact would be. So it even turned into, role-playing type situations. And I remember when I was actually interviewing for the position and she offered me the position, she knew me from my project work, and she knew that I was not afraid to speak up. I would give ideas. I'm an activator. That's one of my top 5 strengths. But based on what she had seen about me and knowing that I was going to a Swiss culture, I would have people on my team from all over the world, she said to me, you want to make sure everybody around your table has a voice. So listen more, be present, be in the moment, ask questions to make sure that everybody around that table has a voice, because you're taking 50 plus systems from around the world. You're creating just one. So if anyone around that table did not have a voice into the process, I would fail. And the outcome of that are the relationships that then I was able to build with people from all different cultures. And today we are Facebook friends. Yoshi, who lives in Tokyo, my family loves seeing comments that he puts on my Facebook page. So that was very valuable feedback. It was timely, it was authentic, we built a trust, and now she is actually a coach for me. So great experience, very memorable.
Excellent. Thank you, Candy. What about you, Charlotte?
I would say mine is probably behavioral as well. And what was effective for me is something that I often use, and that was the timely question. So I had a supervisor ask me after a meeting, what didn't you say in that meeting that needed to be said, and why didn't you say it? And what we were able to get to in that conversation was, the fact that I often have pretty good ideas, but I tend to really want to work them out in my head before I put it on the table. And what happened, or what he highlighted for me, was the fact that by the time my good ideas come out, we've moved on from the conversation. So I think that was effective feedback for me, one, in that it made me look at my behavior and challenge why perhaps I didn't have either the level of confidence or whatever it was to really make the contribution that I could be making. And most importantly, I think because I felt like someone saw something in me that they wanted to pull out. So they came to me with the feedback as a partner. It wasn't an evaluation. It was how can we work on this together? Or how can I challenge you to be all that you can be? And long term, we became kind of partners in the meeting, and that person became an accountability partner for me to make sure that I was speaking up and doing what I could do. So that well-placed question was very effective.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Charlotte. I appreciate that. Marcella.
Thanks, Anna. I like both real-time feedback because I don't want to waste a great opportunity for growth that's immediate and that I can work on quickly, but I love the big picture strategic feedback. And so I had a boss who was one of the best managers I've ever had, who told me a few years ago, where do you want to go? What's your aspiration in life? What's your end goal? And so based on that conversation, she said, this is where you are. This is what I see that you're doing great. You're driven to execute, you're assertive, you're fearless. But I also see that if you don't pace yourself and include people, include your team on those in that journey, you're going to lose people, right? And you'll keep going, but you lose people. And if you want to be a leader, you need to make sure that you include people and have people come along with you. And so she was very big on make sure when you're in a meeting and you know where your head is going and what decision needs to be made, that you're the last one to speak, that you hear what other people have to say, that you ask questions as opposed to coming in and making affirmative statements, because I also can be very direct. And so that in that way you become less intimidating, right? I mean, you grow people, you foster this open feedback loop atmosphere, and you'll grow as a leader as a result. And so I still have that. She's still my mentor, and I still do that. I try not to be the first one to speak at a meeting with my team, especially listen, take the temperature, see where people are in their thinking, and also be supportive of other people's point of views. I'm always very aware of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcella, for sharing that. We're going to go to Rupal so that we can make sure we stay with time here, because we do have a couple more questions before we address our audience. Okay, Rupal?
Sure. So I like a real-time feedback, but how I can actually put it in action for my long-term achievements, So one of the examples that I want to give is, when I transitioned from IT consulting firm to another accounting global consulting firm who was starting a new tech business unit, and it was also my promotion. And I was asked to actually go and speak to all the partners. And being a very passionate tech executive, I was focusing on so many topics that I was passionate. It was my old job where people valued it. But my boss pulled me aside after my presentation and he said, "Did you realize that now we are talking to all this accounting and audit partners and that they all care for numbers? They're very data driven. They like metrics. So you need to change your lenses. So as you move on, whether you change your company, whether you change your position, whether you change your industry, uh, you have to change your perspectives as how people, your actions, because people's perspective changes, and so you have to change your actions."
Mm, mm.
So I
Some
still
good
value
stuff.
that, and I think that was the most valuable feedback I got from him.
That's awesome. Wow. Thank you. That's powerful. Thank you, Rupal, for sharing that. This is an opportunity real quick. We're going to go ahead and do another poll question for the audience. So if we can pull that poll question up. After receiving feedback, and this is a multiple choice, so I hope you can see this on your screen. I accept it and work towards a goal. I ask for validation. I ignore it, or I lose my cool and have an adult temper tantrum. Go ahead and take a moment to go ahead and answer that question so that we can go ahead and get the poll. I'm going to answer as well. And if you do not have access to a screen, if you're on your phone and you don't have access to that, just some great questions to think about. And I think we're pulling that data together right now. And after we share the results from that, we just have a couple other questions before we get to feedback. Oh, wow. So after receiving feedback, 58% of you said accept it and work towards a goal. That's awesome. 39% asks for validation, 2% ignores it, and 1% has an adult temper tantrum. I have a 6-year-old. We adults get to have those now and then too, and that's okay. So thank you everyone for participating in that. And for our last set of questions for today, ladies, now that you've shared your most memorable type of feedback and from who and why, here's the big thing. What can you tell our audience, right, on how you can step into action? Because action speaks louder than words, right? We love that phrase. So question number 1 is for Charlotte first and then Marcella. And it's, do you think there's a key ingredient needed that drives how well you accept the feedback and use it constructively? If I could just give you a minute to answer that. Charlotte?
I think for me, the greatest ingredient is specificity. So if you give me feedback that I can understand what it is that you're saying for me to do, or what you observed, that makes all the difference in the world. And I know a lot of times we give feedback and it's judgmental. So we'll say you were rude, or you seem distracted, or you lack attention to detail. But if you give me specific behaviors that say, Charlotte, during that meeting, you looked at your computer screen the whole time while I was talking to you. That led me to believe that you were distracted. Now I can receive the feedback because I can't argue the behavior. I can't argue what specifically happened. I can't argue whether or not I was rude or I was disrespectful. So one of the things from an action perspective, I would challenge everybody, if you get feedback that is judgmental or is, somebody's drawn a conclusion, to really help walk them back into, give me, what did you observe? What were the behaviors? What made you feel that way? That now I have something that I can actually work with.
Excellent, Charlotte. My takeaway I heard you say is walk them back to specifics.
Yes.
Right? Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Marcella.
Do it with empathy and compassion. Be human. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, people will build up a wall around themselves, and they will not hear anything you're saying. So be relatable, you know, put yourself in their shoes. I mean, that's, for me, that's ingredient number one. Trust as well, and specificity, to Charlotte's point, but empathy and compassion.
Excellent, Marcella. Thank you so much for that. I agree with the world of emotional intelligence. You have to be relatable and be real, be human. I love that. Question number 2. This is for Rupal. If you don't have the key ingredient, how do you get it or find some way to close the gap between what you're hearing and what you believe to be true?
Yes, so for me, you know, one of the most important thing is, you know, I really want that trust-based relationship with my supervisor, because I trust him or her with my career. And I'm putting big bets on you, and he or she is putting big bets on me. So having the trust-based relationship is very important, where we can have an open and authentic conversations, because that's very important. And based on my previous example, my boss asked me, help me, and this is 12 years back, where strength finders were very, very, you know, like we all have done it. He said, let's do the strength finder. And he said, you're a very passionate tech leader, but do you know that you could be a great sales and a people person? Granted, you know, I was dinged once for being a bad team player. But anyway, so he said, why don't you do that? You need to develop more finance and sales skills, because I think you'll be great at it. And sure enough, then I went ahead and finished my MBA. And I thought that was a big pivotal moment in my life, where, you know, in last probably more than 10 years, you know, I could be successful. So I think having that trust-based conversation with somebody who's really invested in your growth, I think that's a relationship. And that's one thing I look for, whether I am being mentored or whom I'm mentoring,
That's
because this is really critical for me.
That's brilliant. Trust-based relationship, loud and clear. That is awesome. And that's so critical and important. Thank you, Rupal, for answering that. The next question, I have Charlotte and Marcella. Here's your question. Do you have a step-by-step process that you can share that has worked well for you on how to best process the feedback? How to best process the feedback? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So Charlotte, I'm going to start with you, just a couple minutes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I would say what I've said before, and that is really the push to get to the specifics of the feedback, because if I can focus on behaviors, then I can know what it is that I need to do or I can do to process the feedback. One of the other things I would add, and this is maybe not as much process as getting, but creating a safe space for people to give feedback, I think is really critical. And sometimes, certainly, I think for women and for people of color, there's a lot of things that get in the way of getting honest feedback. For you name it, you're going to cry, you're going to come out of a bag. I don't know how you're going to process it. So I have learned some skills, and I coach people all the time in ways to actually get at real feedback. And often that is not just asking people to give me feedback. So it might look something like, with your supervisor, you know, at the end of this year, if you said someone had performed exceptionally in this role, what would that look like? So you take it away from you're talking to me and you're evaluating me. Now you're talking in generalities. And then I can bring that back to, so given what you see as kind of this exceptional performance, where do you see me perhaps on that spectrum? And I find that, is it fair that we should have to create these safe spaces or maybe use some of these strategies? Perhaps not. But we've all said that feedback is something we want and need. So we need to do what we can to get it and to make sure that we're getting the good feedback.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Charlotte. Some great notes. As you can see, I'm sitting here scrambling and taking all these great notes from all you ladies who are sharing. Marcella, what is your step-by-step process to share that has worked well for you on how to best process feedback?
I think it's the same thing. It's a situation, behavior, impact. I am big on specific examples. And also, as I mentioned before, having the big picture conversation with my team, with team members. What is your end goal? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And then bring it back to, this is where we are today. This is what you're doing great. If you want to go there, these are the things that you need to work on. And then personally, for me, every time I get feedback, I learned many years ago, I need to go back and I need to be introspective. And I really need, like I said before, need to put ego aside. And I need to have an honest conversation with myself. Where am I? Is this valid? Does this resonate with me? Do I need to change anything? And or do I need to change my circumstances? Sometimes you have a catalyst conversation and you just need to change your circumstances and make a hard decision to leave a certain job or to leave a company, right? But this is what you can take away from feedback. If you're honest with yourself, right? Are you on the right path, or are you just burning gas in a place where, or with a manager who really doesn't appreciate you, right? So.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Thank you so much. Ladies, we have over 25 questions coming through, but I have one last question for each of you amazing women today. Just a minute of your answer, and here it is. Based on your years of experience and training in the area of career development, what tip can you offer in about a minute to your younger self? Don't you love that question? Comes a lot, right? Your younger self on how to process constructively to move forward after that first performance evaluation, okay? When you receive feedback that you perceived as negative, from the first one to how you would tell your younger self how to handle that. Candy, we're gonna do this in alphabetical again. Candy, let's start with you.
And I'll, in fairness of time, I'll go pretty quick here. So I think the big thing for me is to really embrace it. You know, once you have that moment of emotion, really embrace that feedback. The other thing what I would tell my younger self is to seek out feedback from different types of people at different levels of the organization, because you could be seen one way to a group and completely different to a different part of the organization. So look for different people to ask that. Also look for people that are authentic, trustworthy, honest. Some people may have unconscious bias and they're not able to really give you all of that feedback. Use that to create dialogue. I think Charlotte had talked about that. And then don't be afraid of the relationships that can be created from this feedback. People that I've asked for feedback have now turned into big parts of my network. They've turned into coaches for me. And I really feel like if you embrace that, take it on, it really will stretch you and it really help you develop quickly in necessary and needed areas.
Woo! Brilliant. Thank you, Candy. Charlotte.
I would say, Charlotte, you want said to you what's being said about you. And when you receive feedback, it gives you power to know what's being said when you're not in the room, and it gives you the opportunity to help shape the narrative. So if I know that perhaps you think I am not X enough, it gives me the opportunity to, if that is so my desire, and I understand that, to show up as Ultra X, right? So that you can see this. Or if I'm seen as being really good at something and I understand how I'm perceived, now I'm able to show up consistently in that way to build my brand. So I want to know what's being said about me when I'm not in the room. And so hearing that, even though it may not always feel good, it now gives me the power to shape the narrative that I want said about me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I can't keep up with all the notes I'm taking. This is wonderful. All right, Marcella, it is your turn.
Don't take it. 20 years ago, I used to, right? It used to, no, I'm not intense. What did he mean by intense? I'm not intense. I would talk to my husband for 2 weeks about the fact that I was not intense. As opposed to, okay, what am I doing that I'm getting that feedback, and how can I turn that on its head and be seen as, no, you know, you're execution driven, you're goal oriented, or right? I mean, don't take it personal, because if you take it personal, you're the main obstacle between you and your growth. And that's it.
Can I quote you on that?
Of course, yes.
Awesome. Rupal.
Hi, if I look back in the mirror and, in a rear view mirror, and if I see my journey, I would say, Rupal, career is a journey, and there would be some bumps, but it's okay to take a detour. Sometimes you'll get a nonstop flights, and sometimes, it's a hike. So it's okay. Enjoy the experience. You may even stall for some time, but just take an opportunity to think about what course you could have taken and what course you need to take next, And most importantly, enjoy the journey. You're not going to be the same person. You're constantly growing. You're constantly exploring new stuff. So be open to new ideas and, keep growing.
Awesome. Rupal.
Enjoy.
Ladies, Candy, Charlotte, Marcella, Rupal, awesome job. Audience has a lot of questions for you, so I don't want to waste any more time. I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Linda so she can receive all these Q&As coming through for you ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today. Linda, they're all yours.
Great. That was just a powerful discussion, and we have a lot of really great questions, and I think some of them you probably answered as you went through your talk. And so I'm going to start maybe at the bottom, because I think some of the ones at the beginning you might have answered. But I thought this was a really good discussion, particularly for our or question for our diversity and inclusion professionals. Some of us work at companies that don't have that quote department or leader in the company that offers an outlet to get that sort of training. So are there any good community groups that somebody could participate in that you think helps you better understand your biases and how that might impact your behavior that you can offer our audience? Charlotte or maybe Candy, do you know of any? Candy, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I would say Diversity Roundtable of Central Indiana is a great one. They have speakers that come in and they talk a lot about unconscious bias. I go to those. Other colleagues from Roche participate. We've got colleagues from Eli Lilly, Salesforce that are also there. So I think that is, and all different types of groups are represented. And I think that would be probably a good place to start. And I can provide information for individuals that are interested in that.
Right.
And I would just say there's a ton of information out here now. And really most good leadership development focuses not only on being a good leader for one type of person, but for all kinds of people. So to be a good leader, you cannot be a good leader without being an inclusive leader. So.
Great, thank you for answering that. There was a question that came in. Have you ever felt that male supervisors do not give tough feedback because they're worried that women might not be able to, quote, take it? And how do you overcome that? I can tell that's certainly been the case in my experience, where you have a passive aggressive supervisor who won't tell you some things, but then when they do tell you something, it's not backed up by any support. And I know when that happens to me, I go out and validate it. I'm an engineer, so I like to triangulate things 3 different ways. And so I go out and try to seek that input from another peer, my staff, or I'll go into the community. I'm on nonprofit boards and I lead nonprofit boards, and I'll go ask for their input. But what kind of advice can you give us on that? Anybody, any answer?
I had,
oh, Marcella.
Yeah, I had 2 great male general counsel bosses in my career. I loved them to death, but I never got any feedback. I was always so frustrated after conversations with them. It was like pulling teeth. I would say, can you please, tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm not doing right. I know that I'm not doing something right. And their answer would always be, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. And I used to do the same thing you did. I used to go to other people And finally, at some point, I gathered enough courage to just tell them, if you're not giving me specifics, I'm not growing. I need you to give me specifics. And so that's how I started, but they were great guys too, right? But that's how I started having those tough conversations. You really have to push for it in a very constructive and empathetic way. As a manager, managers have an obligation to do that. And so,
Right.
and some people don't feel comfortable with it. So you just have to keep pushing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think this is a good question, particularly since we're all under some sort of stay-at-home order. But what do you do when you get bad feedback from a supervisor? Somebody said that's overseas, and we know we have some global companies represented here, but we're all working from home and you get this bad feedback. How do you handle that long distance feedback that you don't really know what to do with? Charlotte, you have an answer to that? No? Can't think of an example?
I don't know. I don't have an example, and I don't know that it would be any different from any of the other feedback. One is getting at specifics. Certainly, we've talked about building trust and building relationships. And I do believe that the farther you are from people, the more you have to be willing to communicate, the more you have to ask for specific feedback. Is this what you need? Is there something that I'm doing that's getting in the way? Do you feel like you're able to contribute the way you need to contribute? Am I in some way coming across as not effective? So you probably have to push even harder, because you don't have that face-to-face. You may not have all of the cues that you get from being in somebody's presence and being able to sense that energy. But that's where that extra communication and being open and even vulnerable and transparent to help people to understand that we realize that this is a long distance relationship, and perhaps there are some extra things that we need to do to make sure that we're coming across as effectively to one another.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it is important that you don't rely on one thing you hear, and that once again, that you're seeking clarity and that you ask all the right questions and not be afraid to do that. Great, thank you, Charlotte. Here's one that I think is really interesting. As you gain seniority, how do you handle career feedback that says, hey, your runway is limited and, you can't change an, old horse or make an old horse run the race or something, I don't know. But how do you handle that type of feedback? Because some of you are in my position where you've, been in the industry 25, 30 plus years.
I wouldn't allow people to put limits on what I can do.
Yeah.
I would never, and I go back to sky's the limit for me. I will never allow anybody else. And I have a story, and we skipped this, but 20 years ago, I was a paralegal in the US because I had a law degree from Argentina. I couldn't practice here before I went to law school again in New Jersey. And I used to be a paralegal. I worked for this lawyer at a big company, telecommunications company. There was a case where she said, there's 12 boxes of documents. We have a meeting with the clients, go through the boxes, and let's be ready to answer questions. We got to that meeting. And I was the only one who was able to answer all the questions. I was a paralegal. The senior lawyer who was there with me couldn't, because she hadn't reviewed this. And after that meeting, she stopped me and she said, I know you were a lawyer in Argentina, but you need to make sure you understand you're just a paralegal here, and you'll always be a paralegal here. And so that's a catalyst conversation. And somebody asked a question about a catalyst conversation.
Right.
I went back home. I will not deny that some tears were shed over 20 years ago, but that's the next day I went to Rutgers Law School in Newark, New Jersey, and I signed up for law school again, right? And so don't let people tell you what you can and cannot do, right? Break away from that. Nobody can put a mold on you. And so if people tell you your runway's limited, go to another company, go get a different job, right? I mean, I don't let people, I'm so passionate about that because that happened to me. And if I hadn't been honest with myself about what am I doing, and I need to gather the courage, I had 2 little kids, I was scared of going back to law school. I needed my job, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it. I don't care. And so that can change the course of your life. So don't let other people define who you are.
Yeah, that's a great bit of advice for all of us. I remember I was a young engineer and I was at a plant down in Texas, and one of the I was trying to voice my opinion about something we should do. And one of the more senior supervisors said to me, "Little woman, we don't mind you secretarial folks coming down to us and telling us, giving us some advice, but you keep those educated women out of this plant." And it was kind of like putting me on notice, you know, that my opinion didn't matter and my opinion was stupid. Like what I was suggesting we do was stupid. And so many of you have said today, okay, take a step back, you know, don't have your adult temper tantrum, and then try to understand what he's trying to say. And, you know, maybe I was saying it in a way that I wasn't providing all the data that kind of supported what I was trying to say. And so, yeah, I probably was not communicating it well. And he just didn't articulate that in a way that sat well with me. But what he was trying to say, you know, helped me grow from that experience. So,
Oh my God. Incredible.
This question came for Candy. When you approached your supervisor and tried to put them on notice that you didn't understand the information that they had given you and you felt like there was some bias there, was there any negative consequences to that?
Luckily in that situation for me, no. I think if anything, people knew that leader's character, and once they heard that I had went through that, I think it really helped to handle that leader in the way that that leader needed to be handled. So I think by me speaking out, the signs were already there, but I think me taking that next step actually helped some things get put in place, because there were other people, specifically part of that team. I was a manager on that team, and we had other managers that reported into that leader who was a director at the time, and they were suffering because of things that she was doing also. So in that situation, it actually worked out for me.
Okay, great feedback. So how about this question? I think we have time maybe for one more question. How do you give feedback to a team member who is being attacked or feels they're being attacked by a shared leader, and they share that emotion with you, and especially if you have that same feeling, you share their emotion, like how do you unite, or how do you support each other together to make sure that you're doing the right thing and addressing it?
Yeah, so Linda, I had that experience.
Oh, good.
But at the same time, it was coming from my team. So the very first thing as a manager, I wanted to be empathetic to that person, but yet not share too much of my emotions, that I'm going through the same experience. But I also found myself in a very in a place where I have responsibility to make sure that this feedback, including what I was already feeling, has been shared in all the way up to the food chain, in making sure that this person has been heard. So number one, you never want to shut down somebody when somebody comes, because you have to have very open mind and understand that yes, I'm one of the managers or even a colleague, I'm there to listen to you, because having that active listening for anyone who comes with any grievance or, just experience is very critical. Otherwise you shut down the people. But then making sure that whether, you tip your HR if that is a serious case, or, we as managers at least have that responsibility, and sometimes that opportunity to share it in a group who can take actions. So I think that's what I did, and it really happened in a very recent experience that now that partner is not even working for that company, where we both work together. So I think sharing that, having that effective communication upward is very important, and then providing empathetic feedback to that person.
Right. Thank you so much, Rupal, for that answer. Anybody else? We're at our time limit, and I know that there's some questions that we didn't get to, but once again, we're going to try to, there weren't so many. We were worried we'd have so many that we wouldn't be able to facilitate getting those answered, but we will have a newsletter that'll issue online, and we'll address the other questions that came in, because these are amazing. This has been an amazing group of professionals and experts. And I know for me, I truly appreciated all the time and the that went into organizing this and planning it. And for all of those who've been watching this and listening to this, we really appreciate your time and hope we helped you today. And join Women in High Tech. So.
Thank you all. Thanks all, ladies, and thanks all
Thank you
for
so
being here
much.
with us.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.